Welcome to A Walk Through Shadows. Join us as we shine a light on all things that might possibly be strange and paranormal. Each week we will share stories that may be based in fact. It could be a complete fabrication. But as always, we will discuss each of these in depth and why they matter. Hello, and welcome to this evening's episode of A Walk Through Shadows. This evening we'll be talking about that undefinable, invisible force that kind of shuts our footsteps into the shadows away from what most people would consider to be normal. And, I'll preface this by saying normal is a little overrated. So most of the interesting things aren't really actually normal. But what I'm talking about is, of course, magic. And we're not talking about like fireballs and lightning bolts. We're not talking about Gandalf and the Balrog or Harry Potter or even Harry Dresden, which those are all wonderful stories. Now we're talking about more common magic. And like most things, it's the small things that have the most impact on our lives. I'm, of course, your host, Charlie Romans, and as always, my amazing co-host, Samantha Romans, is with me. And tonight we're going to be talking about what is known by many things, but commonly it's referred to as granny magic. Now, if any of you were fortunate enough to have a grandmother who knew things, or an older female family member who knew things that not everyone knows, then you'll enjoy this. And it's interesting that most of the people who use this type of magic were women. And I'll make this statement. I ran a business for years, and I've said this numerous times over the years. If you want anything done with a high attention to detail and done properly, get a woman to do it, because men are like, oh, it's good enough. Well, we'll move on. But no, women are very diligent about things. And this granny magic, it's thousands of years old. And it started with people who weren't, as I said, hurling fireballs, but they were watching the signs. They were making correlations between weather patterns and animal behavior. These weren't people who studied in ancient dust-covered libraries. These were people who dug their hands in the soil and knew that undefinable thing that went through basically every breath of our lives. So, before I continue to ramble, and I will do that, I'm sure you've noticed, we're going to wade right into granny magic. And I got my spectacles here, a little bit of modern magic, if you will. Okay. In Appalachian folk magic, Appalachian folk magic goes by many names: root work, kitchen, witchery, brokery, and I know I pronounced that wrong, but it's a strange word and it's not my main language. And the most well-known name, Granny Witch. No matter the name, it is the tradition of using native plants and local objects to heal and protect. While the term Granny Witch may conjure up images of something dark or even frightening, it is in fact a term of respect. I've always thought about Granny from Beverly Hillbillies. She was a Granny Witch. She called herself a doctor, and that wasn't an inaccurate description, because most of these Granny Witches were involved in healing and helping rather than fighting Balrogs or noseless wizards. Okay, so a Granny Witch is a traditional folk healer and wise woman in rural culture. These ladies use local plants, home remedies, and simple faith healing to care for isolated communities. Everyone needs someone to be the caregiver. Traditions came from Scotland, Ireland, and England. The settlers mixed European habits with the Cherokee and Choctaw use of flowers, berries, roots, and leaves, and African American folk traditions. Granny witches used signs of the moon to plant their gardens. One should plant above ground plants and flowers during the waxing moon. The waning moon is the time to plant root vegetables. Full moon is when plants are at peak energy and growing phase. Either harvest or leave plants alone. Never plant during the dark of the moon, the new moon. A candle flame can be used to foresee the future. A small bright flame means success is coming. A dim flame, disappointment is in store. Flickering flame, it means wavering fortune or enemies. Large and bright flame, good luck. Leaning flame, it means changes are coming. A sputtering flame, it means upcoming romance. Look at the candles back there. They seem to be pretty solid right now. Okay. Sparking, it means ill will and danger is close. A twisting flame means unseen enemies. If the candle goes out, it means you'll have no success. Seining is the traditional Scottish method of ritually cleansing and blessing a house. Use dried rosemary tied in long bundles, tight and light in, and move throughout the rooms. It's a lot like what they would call saging something. Okay. The smoke from the rosemary will remove negative energy. Right desires. Here's another interesting one that you can try. You don't necessarily have to be the granny witch yourself, but write desires or fears on a piece of paper. If you want to keep it close, bury it in your backyard. If you want to attract something, bury it under the front doorstep. If you want to destroy its influence, burn it. Not your problem. Okay, this is another interesting thing. Okay. Hold a piece of yarn or string at least a foot long, one end in each hand. Start knotting the cord while thinking about your problem. Only one problem per string. Keep knotting until you start feeling better. Bury the string in the dirt away from your home. The knots will bind your problem and remove it from your life. Okay, granny witches use local everyday stones instead of expensive crystals. The practice relies on naturally shaped or smooth stones found in creeks, rivers, and gardens. The most prized stone in granny magic is the hagstone or seeing stone, a rock with a naturally occurring hole through it. Because a human did not make the hole, the stone is viewed as a powerful organic charm. I have one of those right back here. Matter of fact, right here. I bought a dump truck load of creek gravel. And since my wife has a penchant for cool looking rocks, and I do too, I was looking through all these rock and dirt and everything for cool rocks. And I found this. This has a hole through it. And this hole was bored through by water and possibly sand and maybe even a little bit of gravity involved there. But this would be one of these hack stones used in granny magic. Okay. All right, here we go. Now, uh, let's see. The stone can be used for protection. It is hung over doorways and windows or placed near bedposts to block nightmares, bad spirits, and malicious magic. It is thought to give magic sight. Peering through the hole of the stone is said to allow the user to spot hidden or disguised entities, including witches, fairies, or spirits. Carried in a pocket or worn on a string around your neck or wrist, the stone is thought to ward off minor sickness and keep the body and mind sound. Smooth stones are heated in fire, wrapped in a cloth, and applied to the body to draw out deep chills, muscle aches, and chest congestion. The heated rocks were also placed in buckets of herbs mixed in rainwater, and the steam would aid in healing. Large stones are laid at the four corners of the property or yard to set an energy boundary to keep pests or ill intent away. Smooth rocks rubbed with grease, lard, or herbal oils are buried to lock in or ground a spell or to absorb physical ailments like warts. Okay. So, and a lot of these things, they started as, superstitions, uh, but back 3,000 years ago, none of these granny witches were actually thinking about superstition. That was the order of the day. That's how they understood their world. Now, it's amusing and interesting to note that science has proven a lot of this stuff over the years. It's like the heating the rocks and for your ailments. It's an ancient version of what we would call cupping and things like that because it's supposed to draw out the poison. Anything that brings the blood to closer to the skin, it allows it to escape. What the ancient people used to call bad humors. An interesting aside, there used to be, and probably still is, an ice cream company called Good Humors. So if things take out the bad humors, well, good humors has got to make you happy and make you healthier. So eat your ice cream, kids. Okay, so now we are going to share 3 stories and then we'll discuss some more of this. Okay, the first story is my nan is a granny witch. She was the one who taught me to do, if I can flip it here, to do a number of things like which herbs do what, how to take the fire out of burns, and to put protection around myself and others. She is an animal whisperer and hears the voice of spirit. She also taught me signs to look for and how to return someone's bad luck back to them if they send it to me. Because of her, I know elderberry will knock the absolute crap out of any cold and will help you get over being sick. Yarrow root tea is a strong anti inflammatory. Ginseng root is a good pain reliever. Peppermint is good for that too. Sassafras, when you steep it as a tonic, is good for cleansing the blood and helps with skin issues when mixed with a salve. Also, ramps are good to eat to clear out your guts. Just be warned, you'll smell like garlic and onions. And Aphatita is another strong smelling herb that you will burn to drive off Hank's critters and anyone you don't like. It's called the devil's dung for a reason. Interesting here talking about all these herbs. People have used these herbs, of course, for centuries. And certain things work, and it's about observation of how things interact. Now you can go into any hardware store like Rural King, for instance, and you can buy these little sachet packs that are mint, and they're supposed to run off vermin like mice and rats and stuff like that. And this all started thousands of years ago when someone realized, hey, these obnoxious little vermin are not messing with that patch of weeds. So uh, it's a little bit of the legacy of a granny witch that now you can buy for I think $3 at the department store. Okay, story number 2. I grew up in the foothills of Appalachia, which is where we are now. In a very rural area, we had to pipe in the sunlight. I've heard that story all my life. So far back in the holler, you had to pump in sunlight. A lot of what I know was from my grandparents and from the small country church and what the old church ladies and farmers would do. It's an interesting thing too. A lot of granny witches, unlike your more nefarious witches, which the word witch seems to imply like a pact with infernal powers and things of that nature, and something completely unwholesome. A lot of these granny witches, a lot of what they did was actually tied to uh, the King James scripture. So, which is interesting to note. I'm not really sure you can run with the devil and quote the Bible at the same time. One of those has got to not work out for you. Okay, let's see. A lot of the stuff we did I thought was normal until I moved into town for college. I remember a lot of Bible magic and commanding misfortune away and a lot of healing magic. Like you could do almost anything with faith, whether it be picking up snakes or having a healing touch or winning the lottery. Physical charms like hagstones or charm bags added extra assurance. There was a ton of psalm work. You'd copy the right psalm down on paper and put it in your shoe to keep you on the right path. I've heard that before too. One was, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." It's a direct quote. It was sewn into a little fabric envelope and then sewn into your jacket. My great granny would pray the line when she sewed so it went into the stitches. Men would bring her their uniforms during World War II so she could do that. My mom had a certain psalm come to her for me. She told me to stick it on me when I was interviewing for a job. I put it in my phone case. I got the job, 20% pay increase. You can bet I'm keeping that paper right where it is. See, now, if you realize here, a lot of these things, like the lady reciting the prayer while she's sewing, a lot of these things are the rituals that we come to associate with magic. Okay. Story number three. My mama and grandma Violet taught me so many small things growing up: herbs, animals, cards, and crafts. It is a blessing to me. I use much of the backwood herbalism for my teas and have a small farm now where I'm teaching my own little one the ways. My grandma would tell a pregnant woman if she was having a boy or a girl. She planted by the signs and made homemade cures for the neighbors, but she would have been horrified to be called a witch. To her, it was just a part of life and living. Okay, I believe that is the end of the third story. Some interesting thing. Let's talk about verbiage and semantics. Okay, like I said, when you say the word witch, it has a dark connotation. What does the word witch, the first thing make you think of?
The witch from Wizard of Oz, the little green, like,
Absolutely, it's that's the association most people make. Uh, but now the actual word witch is associated with the Christian church, and the witch was supposedly have sold their soul to the devil for this magical power and knowledge that wasn't common to the average person. But I know recently, I mean, well, I'll say recently, it was last year, we went to the Mystic Market in Lexington and interviewed and talked to these two very pleasant ladies, young ladies, who were calling themselves witches. And I had this discussion with them, and after discussing it with them, they weren't actually what I would call a witch. Because when I think of witch, I do think of uh, the nefarious end of it, where you do have truck with the devil, as it were. But a lot of people, especially in the modern world, that are calling themselves witches are actually, it harkens back to the ancient herbalists and granny magic. It's people who basically understood the world around them and how they could affect it.
I think a big thing too is like intention. Like with the praying and the stitches and stuff, like,
Mm.
like now the whole thing is like manifest your destiny and
Yes.
everything. And it's like you are supposed to have that intention set. And like if you have that intention, like the world will like see that and push you towards it without even like realizing you're doing it.
Well, the mind is a powerful thing, and they're talking about manifesting, and that could be something as simple as putting yourself in the proper frame. I know uh, authors like Napoleon Hill, for instance, have made a fortune telling people if you believe it, it will happen. And a certain degree of that is true. And I mentioned the ritual with this, like the praying while they're sewing and things of that nature. Sometimes it is a question of focus because you focus on something while you're doing it, and it puts you in the proper frame of mind and anything else. Uh, a lot of people who would detract from this would say, well, it's just a version of the placebo effect. Yeah. You believe it works, so it will.
Which, I mean, I feel like even that, it just goes to show like how powerful our brains are, that like the placebo effect actually works.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because like there's people that do like cancer treatments.
Yes.
And their treatments aren't actually real. It's just a placebo. And then somehow they've cured themselves. Mm. And that happens with everything. It's just like you can just will something away just by thinking that it's how it should be. Like you think something's working, it just works. And your brain doesn't really know how, but it just does.
Right. Well, talking about not knowing how, really. uh, your Aunt Patty was she was in the health field. She was a nurse for, Lord, almost 40 years, I think. And we were talking one time, and she said, the miracle drug, the best thing they ever invented was aspirin. Because you take aspirin, it goes where it needs to go. Nobody really knows for sure how it works. And I always thought that was amazing because another story that I tell frequently, and I've probably told you this before too, uh, willow bark tea. Okay, and a lot of the old wives, wise women would, if you were sick with anything, they would brew you willow bark tea. And depending on how sick you were or how much of it you took, and they did it a certain way and whatnot, and it did well. It healed generations of human beings. Now, fast forward to when science actually became a thing. Science developed aspirin, of course, and part of the things contained in willow bark tea are some of the components for aspirin. Mm-hmm. So, and then there's a huge movement. There has been for the last 20 years, going back to holistic medicine and herbal healing and things of that nature. Because, everything that we ingest, even things that we breathe in, do affect our body. So, it's just like something as simple as aromatherapy. Mm-hmm. Maybe 3,000 years ago, uh, Granny, the wise woman, told you, here, now you take this bundle of herbs home and you put it in a bowl and you light it and you breathe the vapors and it'll fix what ails you. Mm-hmm. It'll calm you down and help you through this.
And now it's vapor rub.
And now it's vapor rub, or it's aromatherapy. Yeah. Yes. So, and I'm a huge fan of the more natural the remedy, the better. The fewer ingredients, typically, the more effective it is.
I mean, I think that, no matter what religion you know, feel like you are, whatever, I feel like you have to see that everything that we have that, is curing is naturally on this earth, because it has to be. Whether you believe that God put it there or, whoever, you have to understand that, like, something that will fix whatever ails you is, it may not be in your region.
Right.
It may only be in, like, the Amazon rainforest or whatever. Right, yes. But, like, there's got to be something that can cure everything.
Yes.
Because I feel like there couldn't be anything that we have that has no cure somewhere.
Well, I would tend to agree, unless it was something that caused the illness was totally fabricated by human beings.
Yeah.
And even at that, uh, the entire world is like a giant medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you don't necessarily have to get up every day and take a handful of aspirin to get through the day. Yeah, some of us that get a little age and wear and tear on us. The aspirin's your friend. Okay. But as a general rule, you may not necessarily need all of that every day.
Yeah.
And it's amusing that, and again, I will make the disclaimer: I am not anti-science. It sounds like I am a lot, but science is very arrogant. Okay. I like the description John Keel did in his book, The Mothman Prophecies. He compared scientists. He said, you have scientist A who, they say, if it hasn't been discovered already, it's not, possible because we have no proof of it. And then you've got scientist B, which, of course, now scientist B would be my favorite type of scientist. They go in and say, okay, what can we find out? But typically people believe scientist A more, and because it's easier, and you can say, oh, well, no, you're just a superstitious peasant. I need to go get this antibiotic shot from the doctor. And I guess I should throw this disclaimer out here now too. I am not anti-medicine at all. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I'm saying is we lean too heavily on this when there are more natural things.
Which I want to say too, like, the like anti-vax moms that they're like, oh, I can treat everything with elderberry syrup. Like, I feel like if something is bad, definitely go to a doctor about it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But like, there's a lot of times where like, you go to the doctor and it still doesn't like work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in that scenario, like, try the elderberry syrup,
Well,
try the
yes.
whatever, because what's the worst that could happen at that point?
Yeah. I mean, you drink some probably delicious tea. On a side note, Michael Russ made some really stout elderberry wine. Very good stuff. I don't know if it cured what ailed me, but it really made me not care if I was ailed or not. Uh, so, anyway, let's talk about some of these things here that they use. Okay, I'm not going to knot string. I won't make you sit through that. But this is a very cool rock, and is it magic? I don't know. But I will say this much: if nothing else, have you ever? I mean, usually we do this as a kid. Have you ever taken like I don't know, a paper towel roll and looked through this paper towel roll like it's a telescope and everything? All right. Now, obviously, there's no lenses in it. There's no magnification factor. But what it does do is make you focus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take this rock, like say I'm examining you, and I take this rock and it's forcing me to look through that hole, then even with my unaided eye, I might catch a
Mm-hmm.
sign, like for instance, of what is causing a rash. Or I might see a blemish in the skin that would indicate that you have something wrong with your bones or whatever. I'm not a granny or a granny witch, so uh, I don't really know, but I do know that the rock is very cool, and that a million people over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 thousand years can't be wrong. There has to be something to it. I've said this for uh, decades. There is a germ of truth in almost everything, and you just have to look for it. Now, let's experiment with candles. Okay. Okay, we'll light this flame. Okay, now part of it might be my incessant breath because I cannot shut up. But see, it looks like a very stable flame. And so I think things are going to be fairly good for us. It's not sparking, it's not flickering. Uh, Fortunately, it's not doing anything to indicate that I would have a new romance pop up. I think your mother might have something negative to say about that. No witchcraft needed to be involved. That would just not end well for anyone.
All I
But
can think about is I wish that I would have replaced the wick with a sparkler.
oh yeah, that would be, or a firecracker,
Yeah.
which is amusing. Uh, Now, if I were really cool, I'd wet my fingers and put this out. But I really don't feel like dealing with burns. So what I am going to do, a friend of mine told me years ago, who was reading tarot and he lit the candles and everything. He said you always have to put your hand behind the flame when you extinguish it, showing respect for the spirits. And I said, well, Bruce, that's a good idea. I said, actually, it helps you blow out the candle too.
See, I think that's a part of the germ of truth and everything, because that could have even just started out, because it makes sense to do that,
Mm.
and then the respect for the spirits could have come later.
Yes. Well, and I'm fascinated. I have to admit, I'm fascinated with indigenous people, the Native American culture. Okay, because now, I'm not going to say that were all saints and no one ever killed anyone else because that would be patently
Mm-hmm.
untrue. But the Native Americans seem to have a more heightened awareness of nature and their place in it.
Mm-hmm.
Regularly, they'd thank the spirit of an animal they killed and they would try to use everything and whatnot. Uh, so that level of respect and
Mm-hmm.
everything blended really well with the Scottish, Irish, and English immigrants. So, because what happened, and I'm old, but I wasn't there. Okay, uh, so we colonized North America, and a lot of our immigrants, well, let's face it, the country was founded by basically Irish and English and Scottish. Uh, so they bring all of their, I hesitate to say baggage, but they bring with them generations of belief in the world and how it operated. So they start settling the area, and they find the Appalachian Mountains. Appalachian Mountains were like home. So they settled down, doubled down, and built villages. Now, there was no, of course, highways at the time. Travel was a bit problematic. So a lot of these hollers and hills, these isolated communities, they would literally be isolated for generations. And you'll notice this, uh, and this is an aside lesson here. I hope I'm not boring you too much, but uh, a lot of the verbiage in Appalachia, it really is preserved, so to speak, the King's English, because pretty much nowhere else in the United States do you use the word poke, for instance, to mean something that you carry something in, a poke basket or what have you. Everywhere else in the country, it's poke. So we have maintained a lot of these because of, well, a lot of it because of the isolation, and then we gathered together with our interactions with Native Americans, their thoughts on this. So I mentioned Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies earlier. Did you see something?
Yeah. It says your tall, bright flame means good luck.
Well, I
So,
guess I'm going to have good luck then. Fortunately, it was nothing bad. But as I said, I mentioned Granny earlier. Granny was a perfect example of this. And it's funny because I'll tell you another funny side story. And I know I'm rambling, but when I was in Florida, I rented a garage. I was doing body work, fixing cars, from this guy named Israel Santana. Nice guy, great guy. Well, and he was Puerto Rican, and all of his family was Puerto Rican. So I'd be in there working around, and I'd come past the office, and they'd be sitting there, and they'd be watching the Beverly Hillbillies. And so Santana's father-in-law actually said, "Hey," he said, "you're from Kentucky, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "You got people like that up there?" I said, "All over the place." He said, "Do people really act like that there?" I said, "Well, the smart ones do." And I just walked off and let him think whatever he wanted to think. But see, the thing of it is, uh, it's a good example because Granny knew what she knew. Jed knew what he knew. Okay. They weren't wrong. And, but, locking horns with modern culture, of course, everybody else, oh, you're just a silly, stupid hillbilly, possibly. But,
well, I mean, like in those isolated communities, like they kind of had to make do with what they had.
well, that's true.
And so when you don't have access to modern medicine, you kind of have to make your own medicine.
Well, that's true.
And
Yes. I
you
mean,
know,
something as simple as you watching the old movies,
mm-hmm.
something as simple as the soldier is wounded, and the person caring for him, it just constantly takes a wet cloth and is wiping the sweat off of him and everything, trying to cool them down because we know that we get a fever when our body is infected or wounded or something like that. So you have to do something.
Yeah.
So and we've proven, and science, of course, has kicked in and supported this, that certain herbs and processes aid in the healing.
Mm-hmm.
And certain herbs and things like that form an antiseptic.
Yeah.
I mean, we even have an astringent called witch hazel.
Yeah.
I mean, you ask your Uncle Mark, he's used a lot of that because he gets eat up with poison ivy every year. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that his mom and his mom's mother and father told him a lot of the old herbal remedies that actually worked. Because we have a tendency, we look back in the past and, oh, these are just ignorant peasants, But that's not really the case. These weren't stupid people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not going to continually do something that doesn't work.
Yeah, it was just people that were making the best with what they had.
Exactly. Yes.
Because if you only have so much, you're going to use that, in the best possible way.
Exactly. Yes. Now, what do you think about some of these other things about these granny witches using herbs and scripture and things that to ward off evil?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to, like I said earlier, with the whole intention thing. If you're, you know, setting your intentions of like light and hope and, positive things, then there's not going to be room for negative things in your life.
Right.
Because it's your whole mindset and, all your hopes and wishes and stuff are so filled with positivity that, like, even if something negative happens to you, you're not going to take it as hard and dwell on it as much as if, you know, you already had negative thoughts and you were already like upset and stuff, you know. So, and I think that works for like other people too, because like if you know that other people have your back and are, rooting for you and putting their hopes and dreams into you, then you are more likely to feel uplifted and,
This is true.
you
Yes.
know in the same vein, not be as affected by the negative thoughts, because well, if nobody else cares, my mama did this, so,
Mm.
you know at least I know my mama cares about me and stuff like
Right.
that.
See, I've actually told my friends, not to sound maudlin or anything or overly emotional. I get that way sometimes. But, I had some friends, it's been years ago, we had this discussion. And my concern is just that. A lot of times people think that no one cares.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge problem now because
Yeah.
we're more connected than ever, but far more isolated. And I told these friends, I said, look, if you ever get to the point where you think that no one cares about you, no one loves you, I care about you, I love you,
Mm-hmm.
and it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks
Mm-hmm.
because my opinion is the most important. I think you're okay. Call me, I'll tell you you're
Mm-hmm.
okay. And it could be something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Now, and another thing too, it's like a lot of this old granny magic revolves around making the, I guess you could say, keeping the herd healthy, so to speak, the community. So you've got grandmother here, and it doesn't matter if grandmother's 50 or 70, okay? And she's dealt with these things, she's seen things happen for these years, all these years. Well, then you've got a young mother, for instance. So, grandmother, my baby's colicky, my baby's sick. Well, then the granny says, well, I know how to fix this. Come in here and we'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And not only is she getting the magic, as it were, but she's also getting the emotional support.
Yeah.
Because we all need a second opinion. I mean, I've fixed cars for years. And when Dad was still alive, I mean, I'd be working on something. I'd ask Dad what he thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
even though I pretty much knew what it was. But it was
Mm-hmm.
nice to have a second opinion.
Yeah.
And it also gives me an opportunity to complain about it. I can't believe these idiots made this way.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that has nothing to do with granny magic.
We have a comment that says, my great aunt was called a granny witch. She charmed a wart off my father's hand when he was a boy.
That has more precedent than you think. My father, for instance, swore that his mother was a witch. I don't really know. I know she was a very sweet old lady, to me anyway, who baked cookies. So, I mean, I didn't really think about her being a witch, but Dad said that she would regularly buy warts from people, charm the warts off of them, and she would charge them. Her price was a broken pen. So she would do this, and she would take the pen, and in a couple of days, uh, the wart would go off of the person that wanted it gone, and come up on her finger temporarily, and it just go away. So there is a precedent for that, and that's not the only instance I've heard of that. Uh, a lot of these old healers, and I've said this before. I'm a huge fan of fantasy movies, right? Fantasy literature and things like that. A lot of times, the old healers were thought to Like say if you had a disease, they would
Mhm.
take your disease from you, and
Mhm.
then you go on about your merry, you'd be healthy and happy, and then they would just force out the disease, and it was their gift to be able to do that and master that illness. So yes, I mean I've heard that before, and there's a personal connection to that as well.
Yeah. I think part of that could even just be like because things are contagious.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that would already travel anyway.
Yeah.
And then if their immune system is so much better because they are
Yes.
consuming these herbs, and they probably at this point has already had that disease 20 times, they can get over it a lot faster.
Exactly. Well, I mean, uh, it's funny because when I was younger, I healed really fast, and I still heal pretty good for an old man. But my dad used to compare it to that Jerry Clower. I mean, some of the older listeners, or of course with YouTube now, anybody can listen to it. Jerry Clower would go on about boy was so healthy you cut him and he'd heal up behind a knife blade. Of course, the same person was accused of standing on the street corner with a quarter in his eye disguised as a parking meter. But Dad would compare me to that because I would heal so fast. And of course, now over the years, those three letters get you eventually the OLD. So things slow down and whatnot, and it takes longer to heal. But when I was young, I mean, I healed very rapidly.
Mm.
And so when someone has a robust, uh, I guess you could say, immune system,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, definitely that would affect that. And most of these healers, well, they were wading into it,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it's somehow compassion is hardwired into these talents, but not to say that nurses over the years and doctors have not died tragic deaths by healing people,
Mm.
but especially in war and stuff like that, you have these people they're wading through this everything from gunshot wounds to dysentery, and they're healing the sick,
Mm-hmm.
and they survive it. So maybe empathy is hardwired into a robust immune system. I don't know. It may be part of the granny magic. If there were some of these people around that I could examine, I have the hag's tongue. Possibly that would reveal something.
Have you really look through it though to make sure there's no spirits?
Well, whenever you focus on anything, you have to be prepared to see what's there, not expect
Mm-hmm.
what you expect to see. Uh, the one old They Live, I think is the name of it, with Roddy Piper,
Mm-hmm.
where he famous line, I come in to kick butt and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum. Not the exact quote, but it's close enough. You get the point. Uh, but he had these glasses, he put them on, and he would look around, and half these people, these weird zombie-looking alien things, but without the glasses on, everybody looked normal. So sometimes you have to be circumspect and decide if you really want to see what's there. So,
That is true because some things you just wouldn't want to see.
well, no, no, uh, but so so do you think that it's more them being able to use herbs and magic, or more like the power of suggestion?
Mm, well, I mean, I feel like herbs, like I said earlier, you know, um, everything I feel like has been placed on Earth to heal something,
Yes.
whether that's in us or in animals or whatever. Like animals when they have upset stomachs start eating grass and stuff.
Yes.
You know, so I feel like everything on the planet is used for something,
Yes.
and a lot of that I feel like would be medicine, and getting over ailments, and you know I feel like part of it would be suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
but like I feel like a lot of it would have to be just they figured out the right mixture of herbs.
We see that's why at the beginning of the episode I mentioned, these weren't people who were hurling fireballs or lightning bolts. They're
Mm-hmm.
people actually watching what's happening, and people, digging into the earth and watching the signs and the interaction. Because if you come up to a pool of water and the dog won't drink, probably a good idea to go somewhere else. Because a lot of this is using the senses and abilities of other creatures
Yeah.
to to understand. Because, I mean, it's possible. I mean, human race is old,
Mm-hmm.
but it's possible at one time that our sense of smell and our sense of taste and our hearing and were much better.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, our little lap dogs and stuff now.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like, they used to be like wolves and stuff.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, they used to be much better at surviving on their own. And I feel like we could have been that way too.
Well, it's possible. Yeah.
Because I feel like now we are the lap dogs. We are, you know, like a lot of us don't hunt for our own food.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we hunt, usually it's for enjoyment. Not
Right.
saying that they don't use the meat, they don't
Well,
use
no, but
whatever.
it's not something that's 100% necessary to survive.
And a lot of people don't grow their own food, which like with the hunting, like obviously there are people that grow all the food they eat, but you know we don't have to do those things anymore to survive.
Right. So it's kind of bred out of us, actually.
And that's what I'm saying. I feel like it's kind of like with the dogs, like it's been so bred out of them to be, you know, completely independent.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we've kind of done that too. Like we've bred our senses out of ourselves. And like, I think maybe that's why a lot of us don't do the, granny magic and stuff now, because that's kind of been bred out of us as well. Like, because,
Yes.
oh, well, we have, aspirin now, so we don't
Exactly.
need the wood bark,
Right. Yeah.
Like,
and part of it's the convenience. Okay. Bristol Myers, I guess, will make all the aspirin that you can afford to buy.
mm-hmm.
It costs no physical effort whatsoever other than going to the store. You don't have to take the bark, you don't have to brew it, and things of that nature. Well, I mean, it's like I said, I mean, we don't have to dig out the herbs. We don't have to discover or find a granny witch to tell us, what herbs are good to put in a poultice rather, to take away swelling and things like that. No, we go to the drugstore and we buy Salon Pass, and we buy the icy hot and things like that. So the knowledge is lost in a lot of ways.
But I feel like it's not necessarily lost because, like, a lot of our medicine is made with those ingredients too.
Yes.
It's passed down in a different way now, because like all of them have their own special blend of herbs and whatever. Like think about even like toothpaste with charcoal in it.
Yes.
To pull out impurities in your teeth and stuff. Like that's probably something that like grand witches were like, oh well, if you do this, then you won't have tooth pain and stuff like that.
Yes.
And now it's just, oh well, we put charcoal in our Crest toothpaste.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's not necessarily lost. It's just now we think of it in a different way because we're not thinking of the individual herbs, but they're thinking of, oh well, this all has to go into it to make this.
Yes, and I mean, pharmaceutical companies, good or bad, have taken the work away from us.
Mm-hmm.
They've calculated, okay, what can we do that was take away the pain and not kill people?
Mm-hmm.
The bad thing about willow bark tea, for instance, is that you really don't know how strong it is.
Yeah.
So you might be taking the equivalent of half a bottle of aspirin, or you might be taking the equivalent of one of the little pink chewable aspirins.
The little baby ones?
Yeah, little baby aspirins. So, and it's amusing, although science has a tendency to present itself as though it has supplanted superstition and old
Mm-hmm.
common knowledge, but it hasn't really. And what it's managed to do over the centuries is just prove that these people were right all along.
Yeah, it's like um, people would go on about how like African tribes were just crazy about stuff.
Mm.
And one of the things was that they would chew on these sticks,
Yes.
and their teeth were always really nice,
Uh,
but they would just chew on these sticks. And now on Amazon, you can buy these special toothbrush stick things
yes.
that you like just grind on your teeth, and it's supposed to like clean your teeth better than toothpaste and stuff. And you can get that on Amazon now after people were like, "Oh, all those tribes are crazy."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Obviously they knew what they were doing, because if they didn't have cavities, had nice teeth, obviously chewing on a stick worked,
That's true.
you know. And now it's like, oh, well, we just found this. Like, no, people have been doing that forever, you know?
Exactly. And uh, honestly, we have to think of it this way: these were the caregivers uh, and the health professionals of the day. They were what bound society together. If Granny and Great Granny didn't know at least a little bit of what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
there would not be any grandkids.
Yeah.
So, but now is it magic?
I'm not sure that it's magic. I think it was more just people knew well enough to put things together to make it work. And I feel like, you know, to people that don't understand that, that would be like magic.
Right.
It's like a record player. If you don't understand how a record player works, that's magic. Because, like, think about it. It's plastic that's just got grooves in it that makes music that sounds exactly like singing.
That's just not possible.
Yeah.
And you see the old movies. Oh my God, they're a prisoner inside of the TV. Help them out. You don't understand it. One of the best explanations of that uh, uh, came from an old, and I've been a huge nerd for decades, from an old Conan comic book where Conan is talking to a warrior wizard named Zula. And Conan, of course, notoriously dislikes magic, the suspicious, superstitious Sumerians. And Zula tells him, it's been my experience that magic is just science that one person understands and another person doesn't. So it doesn't really take away any of the value, any of the mystery, any of the mystique of magic because it works. And everyone may not understand it, and that's okay as long as it works, as long as someone understands it. So I like to think that uh, 10,000 years of the matriarchs helping the human race survive has a certain degree of value. So we've got another comment?
Yeah, it says stories.
Yes. Have not forgot. We're coming back to the stories. All right. So let me put my magical eyes on. I always think about Lieutenant Dan. You got magic legs. But, and who would have thought that? Okay. So which one of these stories do you think are true, Sam? And which one do you think are false? And, so let's see. Number one is where, let's see, the here. Oh, Nana's a granny witch. She was the one who taught me to do a number of things like which herbs do what, how to take fire out of burns, and put protection around myself and others. Now, she's also an animal whisperer. Now, do you think this is a true story or is it just fabricated?
I think any of those could be true, just because of the fact that, like, there's so much that can be done with what they're given.
I agree. I think the first one is true simply because of the verbiage, my grand. If you're trying to convince somebody of something, you're going to say, my grandmother on my mother's side. It's like my grand. It is a true story. It was presented by Amanda from Virginia. Kind of reminds me of some of the people that I have known over the years. Okay, number two, a person grew up in Appalachia, a very rural area, and a lot from her grandparents and from a small county church, and that's where they were doing the things about faith and snakes and healing touch, stones and charm bags and things like that, and writing the Psalms down and putting them in their shoes and stuff like that to keep them on the right path. Do you think that one is true, or is that a fabrication?
I mean, I think that intentions can do a lot. So I feel like that one could be true too, just because, if you're putting something that is, good in someone's clothing, or, their shoes or whatever, I feel like if nothing else, it would make them feel better.
Yes, it could come back to the whole yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think this one is actually I think this one's true too because I've heard similar things, bits and pieces of it scattered out over different stories. Uh, so I think that could definitely be true. It is true. Becky from Eastern Kentucky. Okay, so we're batting 1,000 so far. Okay, now the third story here is her mama and grandma Violet taught her so many small things: herbs, animals, cards, and crafts. Uh, and she's teaching these same things to her own young ones because she's at backwoods herbalism and things like that. And that her grandmother would be horrified to be called a witch. So, do you think that one's true or not?
I feel like lately, like in the last few years, like people have like really gone to the homesteading thing, like especially after COVID. People have gone more towards like learning these kind of things.
Yeah.
So, the fact that they're wanting to teach their child and stuff, that seems pretty on brand for that.
It does. And the only way I would say that that story wasn't true would be because there's not enough real meat to it.
Yeah.
It's presented as an aside. It's like, oh yeah, I did this too. So
Yeah.
it could possibly be fake, but it has true components in it.
Yeah.
So let's look at the reveal. It is true. Carol, originally from Tennessee, now lives in Maine. Well, my apologies to Carol. I'm not calling you a liar, uh, but and there are similar things that I've experienced in my life from my grandparents and things of that nature. So, so the general consensus, at least here, seems to be that whether it's magic or not, it actually works. So, you know, as it's been said before, a rose by any other name is still a rose. You could call it stink bush and it'd still be a rose. Although you probably wouldn't want to give your romantic partner a handful of stink bushes for Valentine's Day.
I'd do it just to be obnoxious.
Well, yes, you would because I know who you're related to. Okay. Uh, so you're talking to the man that gave your mother a U joint for Valentine's Day one year. My car needed to be fixed. I needed the U joint. And I had gotten her a coffee cup with candy and stuff like that. That's not your real present. I'm going to get your real present later. So then the U joint went out of my car. And ironically, everyone got entertainment out of this because my wife got a U joint and your grandfather got to, in a very frustrated manner, watch me change this U joint in his driveway. So
that also sounds on brand.
it does. So, the takeaway from this is that people have been doing this for thousands of years. And if you'll do the research, you'll see that science has proven that they weren't really crazed. They actually knew a little bit of what they were talking about. So never make fun of Granny because Granny probably knows more about it than you do.
I mean, there's a reason why they got old.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
They survived so much that they kind of know a couple things.
Well, the Farmer's Almanac, for instance, very popular publication that has a high degree of accuracy in its predictions. that's all based on granny magic, all based on ancient herbalism and things like that. And let's be a little polite too. If someone starts calling themselves a witch, like those two pleasant ladies at the Mystic Market, uh, don't accuse them of consorting with the devil, because it's probably just semantics. Now, of course, if they start floating 6 feet off the ground and glowing red, you might want to take a step back and discover something else needs to be done in another state. So, thank you all for joining us on this walk through shadows. Hopefully, we didn't lead your feet astray. So, until next time, I'm your host, Charlie Romans, and of course, the wonderful Samantha Romans, and we'll be bringing you more strange things next week. Thank you very much. Thank you for being our companion on this week's walk through the shadows. Join us next week when we will share more stories of the paranormal. Until then.